I remember the rooftop string lights first, the way they flickered against the dusky skyline like stars tangled in a net. The whole place smelled like rosemary and champagne. The invitation had said casual, that everything about the event felt manicured elite. Crystal glasses, velvet chairs, music that didn't need lyrics to hum expensive. I arrived late, fashionably, I told myself. But really, I'd spent too long picking the right dress, one that said, I still believe in you. One that might remind her of who stood beside her before the world noticed her shine dot in my tote bag was the gift. A small vintage frame I'd found at a flea market and polished by hand, holding a Polaroid from our first summer together. We were sunburnt and barefoot, standing on the fire escape of her old apartment. Her eyeliner had smudged, and I looked like a ghost in the light, but she'd once called it the most honest photo ever taken. I never made it past the staircase. The first sound that hit me was laughter, full, delighted, and unfamiliar, then applause. Then a gasp, soft and collective, like the entire crowd was holding its breath. I stepped onto the rooftop and froze. Sophia was on one knee, a ring in her, hand out in front of a man that tall, clean cut, wearing a watch that probably cost more than my car. He looked like he belonged in a luxury cologne ad, the kind of man her mother always wished she'd marry. And Sophia, my Sophia, looked radiant, not shocked, not confused, just prepared. Her speech was rehearsed. You've shown me what real partnership is, she said, her voice caught in the mic like a spell. What it means to be seen. I felt my knees bend slightly, like they weren't sure whether to run or fold. She kissed him. Cameras. Click dot. It wasn't until someone gently touched my arm that I realized I'd dropped the framed photo. It landed face down with a small hollow crack. I turned dot. It was Taylor, one of the assistants who used to hang out at our apartment back when Sophia shot weddings from our kitchen. Her face was apologetic, her hand warm on my elbow. She didn't know you were coming, she whispered. I didn't respond. What was there to say? I wasn't invited. I wasn't even considered. I was a ghost at a party I had once dreamed of. Planning with her. Somewhere behind me, someone popped open another bottle of champagne. Come on, Taylor murmured. Let's go. I didn't argue. I followed her down the back stairwell. My heels clacked against the metal like the ticking of a bomb I hadn't seen coming dot. By the third floor, I realized I was shaking. Not dramatically, not sobbing, just trembling in that way you do when your body realizes before your mind that something is over. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash the glass against the wall and let it shatter fully, violently, the way I now knew Sophia had shattered me dot instead. I sat at the base of the stairs and opened the tote bag. The frame was cracked. A small splinter of glass had sliced across the edge of the photograph, a perfect diagonal line between our faces. She had loved that photo. She had said, "No one's ever captured me like you do." And now she had proposed to someone else, with the city lights glinting behind her like a film set. She hadn't even flinched when she said those words into the microphone. You've shown me what it means to be seen. I used to show her. I was the mirror she practiced in before. She went on stage dot, but now I was erased, replaced, and worse, publicly. Pressed the photo against my chest and closed my eyes. I remembered how we used to dream together, curled in bed with her laptop glowing between us. She'd describe her fantasy exhibit. Big prints, a rooftop launch, custom cocktails named after art movements. I'd nod and take notes, sketching logo designs and emailing potential sponsors. This night had once belonged to both of us, but somewhere along the line, I'd stopped being part of the dream. Now I was the cautionary tale, the silent news. The stepping stone no one names. The lights above flickered, the stairwell suddenly too dim, too narrow. I stood slowly, bag slung over my shoulder. Photo still clutched like it could rewrite what I'd seen. By the time I reached the ground floor, my face was calm again. Not unreadable, just emptied. Like someone had come in and taken everything down from the shelves inside me. Outside, the wind was colder than I remembered. I didn't bother calling a cab. I walked out. Each step felt like moving through wet concrete. My limbs were heavy, my thoughts stuck in a foggy loop. She didn't know you were coming. She didn't know you were coming. Of course she didn't. She had carefully rewritten the script of her life, edited me out frame by frame, the ring she gave him. It looked almost identical to the one I once tried on with her in a thrift shop. Years ago. She had said it was too sentimental back then. I guess it wasn't too sentimental for him. When I got home, I placed the broken frame on the kitchen counter. The crack in the glass glinted under the fluorescent light like a wound. I didn't cry. I just sat there, listening to the silence stretch around me, hollow and heavy, until the sun began to rise. And somewhere, beneath all the hurt and disbelief, a voice in me whispered something quiet and sharp. She thinks this is the end of our story, but I haven't started mine yet. Before she was Sophia Vale, visionary photographer, before the rooftop parties and tailored suits and wine sponsorships, she was just Sophia, who smelled like coffee grounds and peppermint gum and worked the midnight shift with me at a rundown diner off Division Street. That was where it started. She wore chipped nail polish and thrifted leather jackets with broken zippers. Her hair was always in some state of rebellion, bleach fading at the roots, a bobby pin holding back strands that refused to stay put. She was brilliant, chaotic, magnetic, the kind of woman who made everyone else seem too careful. I was the opposite. Reliable, on time, the one who remembered to pack extra pens, who loaned her $20 until payday, who silently tied her apron behind her back when she forgot again. We weren't obvious together at first. Just two tired girls with aching feet and sarcastic banter during graveyard shifts. But something bloomed in the quiet, between spilled coffee and jukebox songs. Between closing hours and sunrise, walks out the first night we kissed. She whispered, "I've never done this before." She didn't mean. With a woman, she meant something real, something that scared her. Didn't know then that fear would one day swallow everything. We moved in together 8 months later, a one-bedroom with cricked floors and a view of a brick wall. I bought string lights to make it feel like home. She taped her photo prints to the windows because she said sunlight gave them soul. She didn't own a real camera yet, just an old iPhone and borrowed lenses. But her eye was undeniable. Even blurry shots of alley cats and foggy sidewalks looked cinematic when she took them. So I saved, quietly. I picked up weekend shifts and started freelancing graphic design jobs between sleep-deprived mornings. I sold my record collection, even the Bowie vinyls I'd had since high school, to buy her first real camera. I'll never forget the way she held it, reverent, like someone had handed her the future. We built her portfolio from scratch. She'd shoot strangers in the park, couples in coffee shops, anything that moved. I edited her website, printed sample books, ran her emails. She called me her business partner until people started listening. Then I became her helper, her roommate, a ghost at the edges of her narrative. At first, I didn't mind. Not really. It was her dream. I told myself that love sometimes means standing in the wings so someone else can shine. I believed in her more than I believed in gravity. Got her first paid gig at a wedding for a distant cousin. She shot it with trembling hands, and I held a reflector behind her in 90-degree heat, sweat rolling down my back, pretending I didn't mind. Later, when she posted the photos online, the captions read, "Shot this lovely couple all on my own. Such a dreamy day. No mention of me. Not even a thank you." I asked her about it that night, gently. She waved me off. "Babe, it's just branding." Clients want to hire a solo artist, not a duo. Don't take it personally. I told myself I wouldn't, but then came the subtle changes. She stopped kissing me in public, stopped tagging me in her photos. When I offered to help on shoots, she said, "I've got it." She started dressing different, neutrals, blazers, hair straightened and tucked behind one ear like she'd seen in business editorials. She spoke differently, too, polished, careful, void of the messy warmth that once made her irresistible, and she started spending time with him, Dot the investor. He owned a minimalist gallery downtown and wore cufflinks that looked like they belonged in a museum. He'd liked one of her Instagram reels and DM'd her a week later. She showed me the message. "He thinks I have potential." She was glowing. I nodded. Tried not to look small, Dot, at first. It was lunches. Then calls that ran late into the evening. Then a weekend retreat that she called a networking opportunity. She told me he had a girlfriend, that I had nothing to worry about, that she was doing this for us, but when she returned, she didn't touch me the same way. She started sleeping with her back to me, started hiding. Her phone, when it buzzed, Dot started talking about curating an image. Once, at a gallery event, someone asked her if she was seeing anyone. I watched her hesitate. Then she smiled, that careful, crafted smile, and said, "Not right now, just focused on the work." My mouth went dry. I stood beside her, invisible in heels I couldn't afford and a dress she picked for me. I left early that night. She didn't come home until 3 a.m. still. I stayed. I told myself it was just a phase, that visibility was complicated, that she'd find her way back to me, Dot. We still shared a bed. She still called me love when she needed something. And every once in a while, in those rare, soft moments when she forgot to keep the mask on, I saw her, the old Sophia. My Sophia. But those moments became fewer, fleeting, like flickers of an old reel slowly fading from projection. Her family never knew my name. I wasn't invited to birthdays, holidays. The opening of her solo exhibition, Dot, she explained it away. They're conservative. It's complicated. You know how it is. It's not personal. But it was personal, Dot. It was my entire life. I built her website. I wrote her first artist statement. I called in favors to get her a slot at her first gallery show. I wiped her tears after every creative block, every rejection. I paid the rent when gigs dried up. I believed in her when no one else did, Dot, and now, sitting in this silence, remembering it all, I realized I didn't just love Sophia. I constructed her, piece by piece. She was the house I built without noticing. She had locked me out of the front door, Dot. We frame the things we want to remember. We hang them on walls, put them in albums, caption them with hope, Dot, but some things, the ugliest, truest things, don't get framed. They stay hidden in drawers, in dusty corners of memory, in the cracks of silence between one lie and the next, Dot, and still, I stayed, because I thought love was about patience, about loyalty, about waiting until someone was brave enough to claim you. But now I know. Sometimes love isn't about waiting. Sometimes it's about walking away before you vanish completely. The first time I saw the magazine spread, it was at a gas station off the freeway. I had pulled in for coffee, still wearing the same sweatshirt from the night I left the rooftop, the night I watched the woman I loved propose to someone else. Under fairy lights I once helped string in our apartment. Didn't recognize her at first, the glossy version of Sophia, but the title hit me in the gut, the light in her lens. Sophia Vale's journey through art and love. I froze. Her face filled the cover, cheekbones lit like a renaissance. Portrait, ring glinting like truth. And beside her, arms wrapped around her waist, was Daniel, his teeth perfect, his smile effortless, her eyes bright. Brighter than I remembered. I flipped to the centerfold. I don't even know why. Maybe to see if any part of me had survived. That's when I saw them, the photographs. The one of her alone on the fire escape, city lights blurred behind her. The one of her brushing wind from her face with a laugh. The one of her silhouetted, in golden morning light, bare shoulder catching the sun. All mine. Every single image in that spread had been taken by me. My lens, my light, my timing, but nowhere, not in the captions, the credits, or even the fine print, was my name. I stood in that gas station aisle holding someone else's life, and I felt like I was watching myself disappear in real time. By the time I got back to my car, the coffee was cold in my hand. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I texted nothing. I emailed no response. 3 days later, I received a reply, not from her, but from her assistant. A woman I'd met once who had borrowed my favorite coat at a gallery opening and never returned it. All content used in the feature belongs to Sophia Vale under mutual verbal agreement per media. Release dated 03/14 as part of archived website materials. Attribution not required. I remembered that date. March 14th. She'd asked me to sign a document so she could submit her website portfolio to a contest. Said it was just to keep things clean. I hadn't read the fine print. I trusted her. And now that signature, that small, quiet moment of love-blind faith had erased me legally. I was uncredited, unprotected, unseen. I tried to access our shared business account. Denied. I called the bank. It was closed by the primary account holder. The clerk said, indifferent, funds have been transferred. There's nothing remaining under your name. The loft we shared. Veaston, her name, the utilities, her card. My name was on nothing. I had no lease, no rights, no access. All I had was a car filled with old receipts, a bag of clothes that still smelled like her shampoo, and a balance of $63.71 in my checking account. I didn't cry that night. I was too tired, too numb. My body folded into the driver's seat like it was trying to make itself smaller, disappear. I parked in a grocery store lot, draped my coat over the window, hugged my knees. That night, I dreamed of her voice, not the voice she used on magazine covers or in interviews. Her real voice, raspy and tired. The one that once whispered, I can't do any of this without you. It echoed hollow against the silence she'd left me with in the morning. I drove to a pawn shop and handed over everything that held even a ghost of value. The necklace she gave me on our second anniversary, the wristwatch she once said made me look deliberate. The signed first edition of her favorite book I hunted down one birthday. The man behind the counter barely looked at me. I took the cash and bought gas, crackers, and a notebook from a discount store. Then I drove to the edge of the city and parked under a tree where no one would notice me. And I wrote, not poetry, not heartbreak letters, not messages I'd never sent. I wrote facts. Dates, contracts, photo file names, metadata, every time. I'd handed her a piece of myself, every image I'd taken that now had someone else's name beneath it. I documented everything I could remember. Every lie, every omission, every legal thread I'd lost. I didn't know what I would do with it. I just needed to see it all. Somewhere on the third page, I wrote, she built her name on my silence. I paused out then, slowly, beneath it, I added, silence. Can be rewritten. It's strange. What survives when you have nothing? What becomes sacred? For me, it was that journal. I filled it in parking lots, diners, outside libraries where I used free Wi-Fi to search copyright laws and how to recover erased metadata. I watched Sophia's face become a brand, a billboard, a story that belonged to someone else, and I thought of the things she never posted. The mornings I braided her hair before shoots, the playlists I made for her editing nights, The time I pawned my laptop so she could rent lights for a client. The way I once stayed awake all night just to hold her when she had a panic attack and said, I don't want to fail. She hadn't failed. She'd succeeded, but the foundation was made of me dot of my love. My labor, my lens dot, and now she had buried me in polished captions and selective memory. One night, I took out the photo again, the one I'd brought to the rooftop, the Polaroid. The frame was still cracked from the fall, the diagonal glass split running across both our faces, but in the sliver of moonlight on the dashboard, it looked poetic dot like a statement, like a wound made visible. I didn't know what came next. Not really. I had no home, no job, no audience, but I had my truth, and that was something. She thought I would disappear quietly. She thought I'd fade the way muses are meant to, unnamed, uncredited, unimportant. But I wasn't her muse. I was her maker. And now I was going to tell the story she buried. I didn't plan where I was going. Just drove until the city faded behind me like a fever dream, the skyline retreating in my rearview mirror, her face still printed on billboards and bus stops like some kind of blessing I never received dot by. The time my car began to smoke, I was somewhere along the Oregon coast. A strip of pines curved around a 2-lane road, the sky soft and open. The gaslight blinked orange, then red. Steam hissed from the hood like it was exhaling something too long held in. I pulled over in a town that didn't show up on my phone. It was barely a mile wide, a main street with peeling paint and shops that closed at sundown. No ads. No echoes of Sophia's world dot. It was quiet, which meant I could finally breathe. I met Rose when I wandered into the bookstore with wet hair and a half-dead phone. She wore a flannel shirt with a tear near the elbow and a bandana tied around her. Silver curls. Her glasses were too big, and her voice sounded like warm gravel. You look like a woman who needs a second chance, she said without introduction. I almost laughed. I hadn't said a word yet. Instead, I asked if she had work. She tilted her head. Can you use a hammer? I've built dreams bigger than this place, I said. I just forgot to build one for myself, she smiled. Attic needs fixing. Room's yours if you can keep the raccoons out. And just like that, I stayed. The attic was dusty, slanted, and smelled like cedar and forgotten stories, but it had a bed, a lamp, a tiny window that cracked open to let in the sea breeze. I scrubbed the floor, patched a leak, replaced 2 broken window panes, and repainted the walls in muted blue-gray, something that felt like breath. I worked for Rose in the mornings, cataloging books, sweeping floors, organizing stacks of poetry so old they creaked when opened. She paid me in cash and kindness, and never once asked about where it come from. Afternoons were mine. I walked, read, breathed, let the ache of the past settle into something less jagged. I stopped checking Sophia's social media. I let her face fade from my screen, and when her name popped up in photography blogs or gallery press releases, I simply clicked away. Like closing a wound, but at night I still wrote. I filled page after page in a second journal. Not about love or loss, but evidence, emails, contracts, dates, metadata from the photos she used in the editorial spread. Screenshots of the files she'd posted, side-by-sides of my originals versus the altered versions she now claimed as hers. I transferred everything onto an encrypted hard drive Rose lent me. My son used this back when he thought he was going to be a hacker. She said dot each night. I became an archivist of my own life. I wasn't sure what I was building, only that I needed to know it existed somewhere, that I hadn't imagined my contribution, that I had proof. One morning, Rose asked, "What did you leave behind?" I paused, hand stained with ink from a broken ballpoint. A name. She waited, patient. I looked up from the stack of donation books and said, "A version of me that only existed in someone else's spotlight." She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe every woman who survives betrayal speaks a shared silent language, the grammar of survival, the syntax of starting over. The town never asked who I was. They didn't recognize me as the woman behind the lens. I wasn't anyone's muse here. I was just Ellie, the girl fixing up the bookstore attic and walking the beach with a secondhand camera around her neck. Yes, the camera came back. At first, I resisted. I told myself I didn't need to shoot again, that photography belonged to the past, to her world. But one morning, I saw an old woman dancing barefoot on the dock, alone with her headphones swirling in the fog. Her joy was unfiltered, forgotten. By time, beautiful and I raised the lens. I didn't take the photo for approval, or validation, or to be shared. I took it because something in me stirred creation for the sake of truth. Not audience, that was the beginning of the project. I called it The Ones Who Stayed. Portraits of women who had been left by men, by time, by circumstance. Women who remained when the world moved on without them. Single mothers, widows, former ballerinas now teaching yoga in a church basement, immigrant shopkeepers with weathered hands, daughters taking care of fathers who forgot their names. I printed each portrait by hand using an old inkjet printer Rose had in the back. I wrote a short story beneath every photo. No names, just their essence. Their grace. I mounted them on foam board and lined the attic walls. A gallery just for me. For them. One night, I reached into the box at the foot of my bed, the one I hadn't touched since I arrived. Inside, wrapped in an old scarf, was the first photo I ever took of Sophia. She was barefoot in our old apartment, half laughing, one arm extended like she was dancing, caught mid-movement in a blur of light and shadow. The kind of photo you didn't need to explain. You just felt it. I held it in my hands for a long time. Then I lit a match. I didn't burn it in anger. Not even grief. I burned it like a ritual. A way to say goodbye, not just to her, but to the version of me that once made her the center of everything. The flame licked at the corners, curled the edges inward, turned her smile into smoke. I watched it rise until it was gone. In that attic, above an old bookstore in a town that forgot her name. I began to exist again, not as someone sacred, not as someone silence, but as someone whole. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel erased. I felt real. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of gray Oregon afternoon where the clouds feel heavy with untold stories. I was behind the counter at Rose's bookstore, cataloging a stack of vintage essay collections when she walked in, a woman with cropped blonde hair, cracked leather boots, and a scarf that looked like it had seen 10 countries. She paused at the display near the front, the one with my photo prints arranged in a quiet, careful row. She didn't ask permission to touch them. She just lifted one gently, read the caption beneath it, and whispered, "Who's E.J. Lake?" I blinked. I hadn't heard that name spoken out loud yet. I'd written it in the corner of every photo, signed it at the bottom of every print. E for Ellie, J for my mother, June, Lake for the place I used to go as a child to escape the noise. My new self. The one not attached to Sophia. Rose smiled at me from across the room. She's right there. Her name was Maud. She owned a small gallery in Portland called Current, focused on feminist storytelling, quiet resistance, and untold truths. She was curating a traveling exhibit, Erased Women. Your work doesn't ask to be looked at, she said over a cup of chamomile. It insists, it demands, and it breaks your heart. I didn't tell her where the project started or why, but I said yes. She gave me a date, a room, a wall that would be mine, and I gave her my condition. No real name, only E.J. Lake. She didn't blink. Art doesn't need a name, to be honest. It just needs blood. The night before the opening, I stood in front of my own work in a pair of black pants I bought secondhand and a crisp white blouse I ironed 3 times. Around my neck, I wore the olive leaf necklace Sophia gave me on our second anniversary. Back when we still believed love was synonymous with truth. I wasn't wearing it for her. I was wearing it because it reminded me of the version of me that believed. And that girl deserved to witness this. The exhibit was a quiet earthquake. People didn't speak when they walked through the room. They read. They wept. Some left notes beneath the prints, their own names, their own stories. One woman scribbled, "I stayed too." Thank you. Bloggers picked it up first, then local art critics. A few mentioned the uncanny similarity to a certain luxury photo line, the moody light, the framing, the themes of hidden women and quiet spaces. Someone on Twitter wrote, "E.J. Lake is the ghost Sophia tried to bury." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Then came the message. It wasn't signed, just a direct email sent through the contact page of my exhibit's mini site. The subject line, "Are you E.J. Lake?" The body of the email read, "Your work speaks of someone who knows what it is to be forgotten, to be the lens, not the subject. I see the silence between your frames, and I recognize it. No name, no request. Just recognition. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't write back. Saved it. The letter was named Neha Patel. Sharp, direct, efficient. She didn't ask how I ended up on a fold-out chair in her office with a shoebox of evidence and a USB drive labeled proof. She just said, "If half of what you're showing me holds up in metadata and contracts, she's in violation of copyright, intellectual property, and moral rights." I nodded. I don't want to ruin her. Neha smiled without humor. "Good, because you won't have to. You'll just remind the world whose eyes they've been seeing through." We filed the claim a week later. In the meantime, I prepared for the panel, Feminine Light, Modern Photography, and the Myth of the Muse, a sponsored panel at an elite art conference in downtown. Portlandej Lake was listed fourth, Sophia Dane last. When I walked into the venue, it took every muscle in my body to stay upright. Everything in the air reminded me of her. The scent of lavender perfume, the hushed hum of gallery elites sipping champagne, the way the walls hummed with polite admiration. But no one looked twice at me, not until I walked backstage and clipped. On the microphone, Maud handed me a copy of the program. Sophia's face smiled from the last page, polished, luminous, self-assured. The caption read, "Known for redefining femininity through mood and frame." I laughed under my breath. She had redefined nothing. She had taken what already existed and repackaged it in her image. But the thing about light, it doesn't belong to anyone. It can bend, reflect, expose. When they introduced me, the moderator said, "And now, a rising voice in visual storytelling. Her work confronts erasure, silence, and the reclaiming of space. Please welcome E.J. Lake." Applause. I walked out in front of a crowd of hundreds. My heels clicked like punctuation across the stage. I took my seat, adjusted the microphone, and let my eyes drift across the audience. Not for her. For me. The discussion began with easy questions, themes, influences, methods. I spoke plainly. My portraits aren't just about grief. They're about aftermath, about who we become after being left behind. Sophia sat with her legs crossed beside me, nodding as though we were peers, as though we hadn't shared the same story from opposite sides of the frame. When the moderator asked her how she found her voice as an artist, she replied, "By learning what not to say, by understanding that silence is a story." I smiled. Perfect. When the moderator turned to me for closing remarks, I stood. "I'd like to end with a photograph," I said. The lights dimmed. On the screen behind me appeared one of my earliest Shots, a blurred image of hands reaching toward the light, framed by lace curtains. Beside it, a second photo appeared. Sophia's new campaign ad. The framing identical. The edit nearly exact. Only the colors changed. Gasps rippled. Then, a third image. The raw file data. My signature. My timestamp. Dated 3 years prior. My name was never listed, I said. Not once. I turned to the audience. I don't share this to ask for sympathy. I share it because stories matter. Attribution matters. We talk about muse and maker, but rarely about theft that wears the face of inspiration. Sophia was still, I continued. I was once a girl behind the lens. Then I became a woman with the courage to turn the camera around. I didn't stay for the reception. I stepped into the alley behind the venue, heart hammering, sky open above. The olive leaf necklace rested cool against my chest. Inside, they would whisper. Some would defend her. Others would remember my words. But no one could unsee the truth. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not for what I gave someone else, but for what I reclaimed. The hotel smelled the same. Polished wood, expensive linen, and the faintest trace of lilas. Like someone tried to soften the memory. This was where Sophia held her first solo exhibit. I remember watching her that night from the crowd, glowing. In cream silk, surrounded by praise she called uncomfortable but never turned down. Now, I walk in through the same revolving doors, but not as her shadow. I'm announced. E.J. Lake. The moderator says, whose photography has reignited the conversation around identity, silence, and the invisibility of the feminine gaze. There's a ripple. Some in the audience glance toward the front row, where Sophia sits with her fiancé Julian. His hand rests gently over hers. Unaware of the fracture in her stillness, she sees me. She knows. And for a moment, the air feels sharp. I walk down the carpeted aisle slowly, deliberately. My charcoal gray suit is tailored, quiet, commanding. Around my neck, I wear no jewelry. Only a single lanyard clipped with a photo, a black and white portrait of Sophia, taken in our apartment 3 years ago. UNCREDITE over her cheekbones. In faded handwritten ink, she called me invisible. The stage is bright, too bright. But I don't flinch. The moderator offers each speaker a brief opening. I go first. I used to think art was about beauty. I begin about mood and metaphor and composition. But art, real art, is evidence. The room quiets. Cameras, record, screens glow. Evidence of who we are, of what we see, of what was taken and what was left behind. I click the remote in my hand. A photo appears on the screen behind me. An image I shot in 2019. A woman silhouetted against a window. Her shoulders sloped with exhaustion, one hand raised to the light. Then, another slide. Sophia's 2021 campaign. Nearly identical, same pose, same frame, same light, different name. Not mine. I don't speak her name. I don't have to. The photos speak louder than I ever could. Slide after slide, my original work. Then the edited mirror image that followed, published under Sophia's name. I click again. Silence is often mistaken for agreement, for consent, but silence can be a survival tactic. A bruise with no color. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Someone whispers her name. Sophia shifts in her seat. Her hand twitches under Julian's. I was told once that I should be grateful. That being close to genius is its own kind of spotlight. I looked directly at her. Funny, because the camera was in my hands. She rises. I think the moderator stops her gently. There will be time for responses. Please let EJ finish. The crowd murmurs, caught between decorum and tension. Sophia's smile is tight. Her fiancé looks between us, confused. He mouths something to her. What is this? She doesn't answer. I return to the mic. We teach girls to be muses, to inspire, to give quietly. to let others name the thing they made. I stepped forward. I was amused once. Then I picked up the camera. Silence dot and applause dot. It's not loud. Not standing ovation loud, but it's steady. And it's mine. Sophia doesn't speak afterward. She leaves through the back, her face tight, her hand no longer in Julian's. I stay for the Q&A. I answer every question. I never call her out by name. But by the time the panel ends, everyone knows. And more importantly, I do too. 3 days later, the gallery drops her. A quiet press. Release. Creative differences and questions of artistic integrity. A week after that, my lawyer calls. She didn't contest the copyright claim. She settled. Full attribution. Retroactive credit. A payout. NDA optional. I decline the NDA. Let the record breathe, I say. Truth doesn't need to whisper anymore. I don't celebrate that. I don't pop champagne or post triumphant captions. I go home. I brew tea. I close all the blinds and sit in the quiet. Then I take one last photograph. A self-dash portrait. No makeup. No soft lighting. No metaphor. Just me. Looking into the lens with everything I've ever wanted to say. I hang it in my hallway. Beneath it, a small plaque. It reads, "She saw herself." And that was enough.